Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new TNG release. Yes, the Allosaurus has finally released, and that is very exciting news. And I actually had recently found out that TNG is coming back and coming back full swing, as they had taken a break, I guess due to COVID, and now they're actually coming back again to start producing models, regularly. So that's super exciting news if you ask me, because I've really been loving the TNG line. Finally, I get to complete my TNG line as well with this Allosaurus, or at least as far as this style figure goes, until they start releasing more and unveiling more on me, and then I'm back to grabbing all of them again. But it's just exciting to know that TNG is actually coming back, and also to have some clarity on what was going on there for a while, because the TNG figures all just started to kind of disappear, and then they became very hard to get a hold of. We now know why. It's because they were taking a break, so now they're coming back, which means that they should be continuously easier to get now moving forward, or at least I would hope so. But you can see again the final piece to the puzzle when it comes to my TNG figures. Like I said, for this line specifically would be the Allosaurus. There is another line that they have out with larger, kind of softer figures, but those ones are still a mystery to me. I really don't see those ever, except for I do have one, which I haven't reviewed yet, but I will get to at some point. But you can see again the image on the front of the box looks quite nice with the Allosaurus kind of walking. We've got the TNG logo, the species name, TNG logo up on the top, and then as always when you turn it to the side, you have some information on the Allosaurus over here, which is always fun, and then the same thing of course on the other side. So let's pop this box open and check it out. And here is our Allosaurus, and it's so nice to finally see this figure in person. This is one that I've been waiting for quite a while, and I was like pretty much convinced at this point that I was never going to get a hold of it because it was not showing up anywhere. Even Dino Mike Mac, the infamous Dino Mike Mac, who has searched out so many of these TNG figures for me, was unable to find this one for the longest time until it had just recently shown up on Amazon, and I was finally able to get an order in for it. And you can see it's actually a pretty cool looking version. I really like the grayish colors for it. Definitely a fan of that. I will say, though, that I'm not a big fan of the colors right here, like the design, the patterning, because if we turn it around, you can see how it basically is like the lighter tone coming up and extending into the stomach region, and this, I think, looks a little bit nicer. Definitely looks pretty cool, but then over here, rather than having that coloration extend up, it's just like a random star in the stomach region, so that's a little bit strange to me, but at the same time, I guess I can understand. Sometimes I look at things and then instantly change my mind. It's not so much that I'm changing my mind entirely on it. I still think it would have looked better if it looked like this, but you often see, different species where they'll have one sort of a patterning or designing on one side and then a little bit of a different look on the other side. I see that all the time with different animals, so I guess I can kind of understand why maybe it would look that way. It's not like it's totally out of character for some sort of a creature to have that look, but it is a pretty cool looking Allosaurus for sure, so let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Allosaurus, you can see it looks pretty nice. You've definitely got a little variation of color that I instantly see up here. Now actually having it up in the light, I can see that the grayish tones are actually more of like a blue, like a bluish gray. And specifically right here, you can even see a little bit of a lighter blue that's been kind of dry brushed over to highlight some of the detail. There's also a dark gray here kind of moving through the eye socket area, a little bit of a lighter tone in the palette as well. You've got the nostrils sculpted out right there. The eye is painted with a yellow, given a black pupil, also has a nice gloss coat to it, and you can see the red up there in the crests of our Allosaurus, and you can see some nice fine detail in those crests as well. We've got the teeth sculpted out and painted, fairly okay for what they are. You can see a little sloppiness here and there on the teeth. They actually look a lot better on this side. They don't look too sloppy at all over here, and I can even see like a little variation. You've got like the white, but you've also got browns moving near the gum line, which is pretty cool, especially on the lower jaw here. You can see it, and I always like that. It's definitely nice to have a little variation of color, especially in something so small. But you can see we've got an articulated jaw for our Allosaurus. I'm trying to open it as wide as possible so we can get a look at the inside of the mouth. the detail looks really good in there. Definitely looks nice. You can see that there's like a dark sort of a wash maybe that's been applied in there, or maybe they dry brushed the pinkish tone over a darker tone in there so that it kind of highlights the detailing back there. You can also see the tongue sculpted out, has some decent texturing to it. The skin here on the side of the mouth is also stretching nicely as we open the mouth, and you can see a gloss coat shining there on that area. And then of course you can close the mouth. The jaw is a little awkward though, like it's a little wonky. It just feels different than all of the others because you can see it kind of starts to pop open again a little bit. Like, I'm not really sure. It's very strange. It just doesn't operate the way that an articulated jaw normally operates, but it's not the end of the world, I guess. Doesn't work too badly or anything. It's just a little bit different. But as you move back here into the back of the neck, you start to see some ridges picking up here on the back of the neck of the Allosaurus. You're looking at those painted with a light gray, it looks like. Kind of a mixture, actually, of different grays and maybe even an off-white. But as we move down the neck, you can see some creasing in the neck here as the dinosaur has its head turned to the left. You can also see a darker variation of a gray following along the ridgeline there in the spinal column of our Allosaurus. We continue to have the bluish gray for the upper part and then a lighter tone here for the lower part. You can even see a little hint of like some pinkish tones showing up here and there. You can see it right here as well, some really light pinkish tones popping up in some certain spots. As you move down into the body, you can see the shoulder blade right there. You can also see again that area where I'm still a little unsure of, but it doesn't look terrible, I guess, where it almost has like a star effect in the stomach region with a lighter tone. It is nicely applied, like the transitioning between that lighter tone and the bluish gray is pretty smooth and natural. It's just, it looks almost, compared to the other side, it just looks a little out of place. Now I just hit the camera with the tail, but it's not, again, the worst thing in the world. As you move down, you can see the skin texture continues to look quite nice through the course of the figure. You've got a nicely sculpted arm down here for our Allosaurus. You can see a nice bend in the arm as the arm is kind of lifting up toward the body. Some scoots running down the fingers. They're also highlighted with a lighter tone that's been dry brushed over, and you can see a dark gray painted for the nails right there of the hand of our Allosaurus. As you move up into the stomach region, you can see how the skin is kind of scrunching up into the stomach because the Allosaurus is taking a step forward, kind of pushing the skin into the stomach right there. Some more creasing. As you move up here toward the top of the hip region, you can also see again the ridges following along the back, and I like how they are varying in size. Some are smaller, some are larger. As we move down into the thigh, you can see the muscle definition, of course. You can also see the gray kind of striping down through the course of that lighter tone on the back of the thigh. We've got the kneecap right there. You've also got a calf muscle bulging as the Allosaurus walks through, and you can see again some scoots running down the toes as well, just like we saw in the fingers. We have a dark tone, like a black, I would say, for the feet, and you also have that same tone for the nails, but they've dry brushed that lighter tone over the scoots to really highlight those. Definitely nicely sculpted down there in the foot region of our Allosaurus. And then we move up here toward the tail. You can see how the skin is stretching there as the dinosaur is taking such a large stride as it walks forward. You can again see that light pinkish tone showing up here on the underside, I think, of the dinosaur. And you can see as we lead out into the tail, we have that striping effect continue as we move through the course of the entire tail. You also have a really nice curve to the tail as it leads out. Very nice and fairly majestic, I would say. And as you move along the underside, again, the detailing continues to look pretty nice down here, pretty consistent with what we had seen on the upper side. Again, you can definitely see more of those light pinkish tones picking up here and there. You can see the chest muscles of the Allosaurus. And then, of course, when we take a look at it from the other side, you can see that the Allosaurus has its head turned away from us. So obviously it's going to see more of like a stretching appearance to the skin rather than a bending and creasing like we saw on the other side. But you can see again the darker tone there bordering around the eye. You have more of that blue sort of dry brushed over the darker tones that we see here in the face. There's even a lighter tone dry brushed over the upper part of those scoots above the eye right there. Again, you have a lighter blue for the lower jaw, which actually looks really nice. The lighter tone in the palate area as well. And then as you continue to move down through the course of the neck, you again see that we still have that same type of patterning moving through. You can see even more of those pinkish tones in the underside of the neck as you lead along. The arm is in a little bit of a different position here on this side compared to the other side. It's just back a little bit further into the body compared to what we see on the opposing arm, but everything else looks pretty much the same in that area. And then you can see the leg is definitely trailing over here, giving us a much wider visual of the stomach region of the Allosaurus over here. And again, I really like the way that it's painted on this side. I think this just looks a lot cooler than the almost star-like pattern on the other side. Definitely a bigger fan of the way it looks over here. And you can even see in the lighter tone of the stomach, there's actually like some pinkish tones popping up here and there in that area as well. And you can see how the skin is stretching off of the stomach, leading back into the thigh. Again, some really nice looking skin detail, I think, in the stomach region of the dinosaur. As you move up, you've got the hip region. Again, we have that striping effect moving down. We have more of the nice skin texture and muscle definition. I also am noticing actually that in the lighter tone here, there's even some slight hints of a lighter blue, which I didn't pick up on immediately at first. When you get this figure in a nice light, you start to see tones of color on it that you may not even realize are there, which shows you that there is actually a good bit of paintwork that's added to this figure. But as you continue to move down, you can see how the toes are kind of leaving the ground as the Allosaurus walks along and is taking a step. We can also see the dew claws, of course, and you can kind of see one poking out here on this side back behind the leg. And then you lead back up again into the tail, which looks really nice with the nice curve. So definitely a very cool Allosaurus. I am a fan of this figure. I think, honestly, the only thing that could have improved this figure when it comes to the paintwork, outside of maybe, making this look similar to the other side, which, like I said, is not a bad thing that it looks like this. It's just my personal preference. I would have liked it if it had the same patterning as the other side, but it's still, realistic having it this way. But I would have liked to have seen a wash on this one, like a dark wash, or something really could have amped up the realism, I think, of this figure, and just tied the paint job together a little nicer. Dark washes, I feel like, always help a figure for the most part. I guess it depends on the way that it's painted and stuff. But in this case, I definitely feel like a dark wash of some kind could have helped with the overall realism of the paint job. But as far as a size goes, lengthwise, you were looking at about 10¼ inches or about 26 centimeters. And height-wise, clearly the highest point would be the tail with the positioning of the dinosaur, about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. And then to the top of the head, just a hair under 3¾ inches or a little under 9½ centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being, and you can see that the Allosaurus does have a pretty nice, pretty impressive size to it. It's definitely not a small figure, and when it comes to the theropods that TNG has released so far, it's definitely one of the nicer sized releases from them. And to show you that, here is the Carnotaurus from TNG as well, which you can very clearly see. Again, that Allosaurus is definitely a good bit larger than. We've also got a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus next to our Allosaurus to continue to give you an idea of the size. And here's a fairly fun comparison. We have the How Long Good Allosaurus next to the TNG version, so you can see that the TNG version is obviously a good bit larger. However, it is, in my opinion, I think, fairly similar in size to another Allosaurus that is fairly iconic in this collecting community, which would be this Allosaurus, which you can very clearly see is the Papo Allosaurus as well. And I think it's safe to say that there was definitely some inspiration here between the TNG and Papo version, though not as much as you might think at first glance. When you first see the TNG version, you're like, or at least I know I was like, wow, okay, I can definitely see where they got their inspiration from for this Allosaurus. But then when you actually see the two together, it's not as much as you might think. You can see the most obvious similarity between the two would be the way that the dinosaur is walking. Obviously, they're both kind of taking a similar step forward, and they also both have ridges moving along the back as well as a left turn in the head. But the left turn is, very different on the TNG version when it comes to the way that it's positioned. The ridges are very different when it comes to the way that they look, and even the positioning of the tail is very different. So you can see there was, in my opinion anyway, some obvious influence from the Papo version, but also a lot of TNG's own original charm and flair with their version. So this brand new TNG Allosaurus is another really fun figure. I actually really quite like this one. I would almost say it's probably one of my favorites from the line to come so far. I just really like mostly everything about this. The sculpt is very nicely done, has lots of beautiful detail to it, and lots of really nice, very vibrant skin texture. It's got a pretty cool pose, almost a little bit of a menacing pose once you have the mouth open. Looks like it's coming in for an attack of some kind on something maybe a little bit larger, a sauropod potentially. But on top of that, you've also got a nice color scheme. I think the color scheme looks fairly nice and natural overall. Really nice tones of color chosen. Obviously, I have a little bit of an issue with that area in the stomach on the left-hand side, but it's not much of one, and it's starting to grow on me a little bit, I think, as I continue to look at the figure. But I also really like the red crests and everything, and the very subtle differences in color with light variations of blues as well as the pinkish tone moving along the underside. Mostly all of the paint application is super smooth and natural when it comes to the transitions and the application. The teeth, it's the only area that's a little sloppy, but even that's not that bad at all. So I think the paintwork looks pretty darn good on the figure overall. And it also has a very nice size to it. Definitely a nice, impressive size, fairly similar to the Papo Allosaurus. So, again, in my opinion, this is a really cool figure. It's definitely not going to be the absolute most up-to-date, scientifically accurate Allosaurus on the market, which means that, I don't think everyone's going to want it, but I think it is definitely a very nice Allosaurus, absolutely worthy of any collection. So if you are interested in grabbing one, I will include a link in the description to where you can grab it from Amazon.com. So make sure you check that link. Go grab this Allosaurus while it's still in stock. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.